Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, me, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and welcome to Walk On Wednesday. Is it Walk On Wednesday or Walk In Wednesday?
I thought it was Walk In. I don't
walk
know.
In.
Whatever you prefer is fine with me.
Wednesday.
Well,
you like to walk on the show.
Yeah.
Or you walk into the show.
We'll figure that out later.
But whatever Walk-In Wednesday is, before we start the Bhagavatam, we find a person that's got sort of an interesting story and sort of like suck them in for 10 minutes and hear their story. And I got a very interesting story today. Welcome, Bhakta Ed.
Hello. Good morning, everybody.
Morning,
Bhakta Ed is usually an other. An other means someone who listens to the podcast, but not on Zoom. They listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, etc. If you're one of those persons, if you're one of the others, also welcome as well. If you'd like to join us live on Zoom, you can do that. You can do that. You have to contact Mara and download the secret codes by emailing her at, I'm sorry, Kaustubha, at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And then you can join our crazy little family that wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning and does this. But Bhakta Ed's, he's got 3 kids, and he's chasing them, 3 little kids, and he's chasing them around all the time. Wow. But let me tell you his story. When I first got into Bhakti, and some of you know me from the punk music scene, it was very scandalous because I'm the leader of a very popular straight edge band called Youth of Today. And then it was a big shift because Ray Capo, which is my name before it was Raghunath, became a Hare Krishna, and now he's into God and religion, and now he's talking about that on stage, and it was quite scandalous, believe it or not. And so I was old friends with the editor of this magazine called Maximum Rock and Roll. Have you heard of that, Kaustubha?
Of course.
Yeah, it was a big.
I didn't know you were old friends with him.
Well, we were friends with him, and we were completely different. I was vegetarian. He ate meat, smoked, drank. He was a hardcore, atheist and sort of communist leaning, and I was into positive living and clean living and healthy living. But here's the deal: you can still find common respect, or even if you disagree with someone. So every time Youth of Today would go to California, we'd all stay at his place in Berkeley, and we became actually good friends over the years. And he introduced me to Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys, and so many interesting people through this guy, Tim Yohannan. Mm-hmm. But then when I got into Krishna, he got so angry with me. He was just like, you're foolish, you're crazy. So we did this interview in his magazine, and I just sort of like challenged him on points, and he challenged me on my points. And it was a reasonable interview. I was 22, and he was probably like, it's interesting because back then I was like, this guy is so old. He's 50 or something like that. Now I'm 54.
He wasn't 50, was he?
Yeah, I was 50.
He's that old? I had no idea. Okay, so he was a real kind of child of the 60s coming up, and
he came up with that. Yeah, and he got into punk and saw the Sex Pistols and all that. So anyway, he interviewed me, but after the interview was done, which isn't clean journalism, he wrote all these sort of like things after the interview that only the editor could write in, which were sort of jabs and pokes and stuff like that. So it wasn't like a fair interview, I felt. And then he brought on this lady who said, hey, and he dedicated the whole magazine to cults and why God or spirituality shouldn't be in the punk scene.
And you were on the cover.
And I was on the cover, but with many
cover.
Versions of me shrinking like I'm losing my mind. That was like, right. I guess or growing, depending on how you look at it.
I think
and it became according to them, it was the #1 selling issue they ever did, and it was in that international fanzine. But anyway, then they brought in this lady, and this lady said, yeah, this whole Krishna thing is a massive cult. I know, because my husband was in the hardcore scene, and he can vouch for it, There are a bunch of cult members, and me and his parents saved him from the cult by getting him deprogrammed. So I was furious because, you know, these deprogrammers were like, I mean, these guys were like criminals. They would come in, oftentimes, kidnap the person, take away all their sort of human rights and dignity, and think they are helping the person. And they're accusing a cult of brainwashing. They were doing the brainwashing.
And they're getting paid about $10,000 to do it each time.
At least $10,000. At least $10,000. And anyway, to make a long story short, I was always wondering, who is this hardcore guy that got brainwashed and then got deprogrammed? You know, who was this guy she's talking about? And guess who it is?
Bhakta Ed.
Bhakta Ed. Bhakta Ed. What the hell happened to you, Bhakta Ed?
Oh, it was, you know, the backstory to the issue is even worse, is that I think that Tim Yohannan knew that the interview was in place, and my wife had written at the time. So it was so coordinated. You could tell by the issue that it was, you know, this was this massive backlash that was put together. But just a backstory on deprogramming in general. So in the 70s, you know, after the counterculture had arisen and new, quote unquote, new religious movements came into the United States, lots of people who thought that the counterculture was over and the hippies were gone had this new enemy, other religions other than Christianity, essentially. So a movement of people, and I don't even know where it started from, but did as you said, you know, they would kidnap people. You had mentioned somebody else, a friend of yours or whatever, who they made smoke pot or eat meat, and, you know, it was very, you know, yelling at their face and stuff like that. And I don't know how much success they had, but it was a good try. But
well, they had success with you. You got out of it, right?
Yeah. So by the time, so I was deprogrammed in the late 80s. So the late 80s were, you know, mid to late 80s, there was at that point, you know, the psychology community a part of the psychology community had bought onto this concept of quote unquote brainwashing through a book by Robert J. Lifton called Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. And that was sort of the handbook within the psychological world that they used to show how people were quote unquote brainwashed. So the deprogramming moved from a kidnapping sort of version to a kindler, gentler version of the process.
So you got a gentler deprogramming?
Yeah. So
it's sweet of them.
Yeah. So essentially they needed you know, it was a good cop, bad cop experience where my ex was the good cop. And my mom was sort of tangentially involved, but it was sort of spearheaded by my wife, who was very upset that this guy who she married was now enamored with this blue cowherd boy.
It's enough to make you furious.
Oh, it's awful, you know, for her. It was awful for her that this guy stopped doing every kind of drug, stopped eating meat, and started to pray.
This is your ex-wife, right?
Yes. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Yo, she's in the other room furious right now.
Well, we're bringing her on the show, and here she is.
We're actually deprogramming you now. We were hired by the deprogrammers.
So yeah, so they needed the good cop. The good cop was my wife. It was all planned at my in-laws' house. And these guys came to the door. I had known about deprogrammers, you know, through talking with devotees and being around devotees. And so I knew what they were. So when they arrived, I was like freaked out because I heard horrible stories. And these guys basically came in and said, no, we just want to talk to you. It's, you know, this is totally voluntary, you know, whatever. So of course I ran upstairs and I called the Boston Temple and talked to Raghunath Swami. And I was like, you know, there's deprogrammers here. What do I do? They said, they're just going to talk to me. And he's like, get out of there. Get it. So But my wife said, no, your mom paid a lot of money for this. Let's just talk and stay and see what they have to say. And, you don't have to do anything. So that was the gateway to getting me to stay. And
so they basically shook your faith.
100%. Yeah. So for 4 days straight, between 8 and 12 hours a day, I was talked to. There was some debate, but essentially I was being talked at. I watched video after video after video after video after video, and it makes me think. Raghu, there was that I don't remember the song, but there was that 7-inch that came out, a Shelter 7-inch.
Deprogrammers want to program me.
Yes.
How is that for irony? To be like someone they want me to be if I don't fit into your concept of reality.
Yeah, that is it in a nutshell. So for 4 days straight, they're literally breaking down a person. And it's so twisted that at the end of it, they have this, at least my guys did, they had this ritual where they would they would cut your Tulsi beads off, and then they would cut your sheik off. And it was almost like this weird, like when you hear these stories of Vietnam vets who wear ears around their, collecting ears,
right,
wearing them around their neck.
I've never heard that, by the way, but I was like, yeah, sure, ears around their neck.
You watch cleaner movies than I do, I guess.
Okay.
So, so they had this weird ritual where they cut my sheik off, and of course I'm broken at this point. Like my entire worldview has collapsed. So at that time they had a thing called cult rehab, and they sent me to cult rehab, which was basically, you have all these people just like basically losing their mind. They're crying, they're devastated. I mean, it's just a horrible process. So they send you out.
How much did this cost your parents?
I don't know. I never even asked about it, but I think you guys are probably correct. It's very, very expensive. There's multiple people involved. There was 3 principal deprogrammers, and then they invited basically guests each day.
Sort of like what we do, Kaustubha. It's walk-in Wednesday, questions and answers day. So can I I'm going to fast forward. So you left Krishna consciousness. Did you leave spirituality?
No, the experience, it was a short period of my life. It was like probably 6 or 8 months of my life that I was just, I was going to Mangala Arati every day and just very involved in.
Okay, so you were new to Bhakti.
Yeah,
and then you got out of it. Where did you go from there?
Well, the Bhakti had taken root. There's a lot of talk about this. I had a taste for the name. I had a taste for kirtan, I had a taste for japa, and I had a taste for the philosophy. So, and association with devotees, right? So I tried to put that same understanding in different boxes from that point forward. I majored in philosophy. I became a very serious Christian and went back to school to get a master's in theology. And so I'm basically trying to figure out how to do this bhakti thing that I was told. I mean, it's essentially like he's saying, your mom and dad are not your mom and dad. They're evil criminals, and don't ever talk to them again. And it's
where can you find a real mom and dad?
Right. So then you, and really mom and dad is looking for you the whole time. Right. So I tried to find in different, and I'm happy in some ways because I think, I needed to go through different things. So I'm learning the things that I learned in those different traditions. I'm bringing back into my own understanding of the Sampradaya. And it's
what made you come full circle? Like you just got back into Bhakti.
Yeah. So, right? Yeah. So one of the things, I had mentioned was, japa and kirtan were such something enters your heart, right, in these processes. So I tried to figure out within my own traditions, what could I do? So I started to essentially make up mantras within my own tradition. And, every few months I would try to chant these mantras, and something wasn't right about it. And God forbid I could ever go back to Maha Mantra, because that was like taboo, right? So a long story short, my theology shifted to a point where I needed to figure this out. It was just so deeply ingrained after 30 years. So basically I went on Database and did keyword searches for things like Jesus, and what Prabhupada had to say about
Database is a collection of Srila Prabhupada's books that you could search online.
Yeah, it's a fantastic resource. Any topic, you can go in there and find all sorts of stuff. So with
what did Prabhupada
that,
say about Jesus?
So with that, his Christology, that's the technical name for what you think about Jesus, matched mine at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that he said that, he was very ecumenical, if you can find a name of God, chant that name. Right. So I felt very uncomfortable within my tradition. It just wasn't, there was something, a heart base that was not resonating. And he said, if you don't have that name of God, why not chant Krishna? Go, just try it. So I remember, this was probably about 5 months ago or 6 months ago, something like that. I started chanting again. And it was literally like, I had not, you see these stories on the news where, somebody had a teenage sweetheart and they were in love. And then, 60 years later, they meet as old people and they fall in love again. It was literally like that. I just took to the name in such a beautiful way. And by that point, the name has a hold of you. And then somebody I called the Bhakti Center. It was sort of like almost like a PTSD moment, coming like, oh my God, I'm a Hare Krishna again. What's going on? What's happening? So I called the Bhakti Center and they sent me over to you guys, essentially, Vera.
To Wisdom of the Sages.
Yeah, Vera had mentioned the podcast. He said, you can't, because your family life, you can't really, this is before coronavirus hit, but you can't truck into the city on the times for classes or kirtan or whatever, but you can develop sangha in this thing called Wisdom of the Sages. So at that point I started listening every day as an other, and joined Patreon and started to interact with other people on Discord, which is really, if anybody has not done that already, and you are alone in this process of bhakti, get on it, because it will change your life. You develop friendships and you support each other, and it's really, really beautiful.
And that was not a paid advertisement.
No.
Somehow we lost Raghu. Hopefully he's about to come back. I'm not sure what happened. Mary, did you cut Raghu out? Tell the truth.
I did not cut him out. I don't
Okay. Well, anyway, that's a fascinating story, Bhakta Ed. It's great to have you back.
Yes, Haribol.
Thank you for tuning in. You have so many great questions, that you provided. They're generally like these short questions and technical. And someday we just got to just do one day Bhakta Ed answer all your questions in a row.
I love that.
But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It was a very interesting history, and it's you're a very interesting person. But it's I'm happy to know that you're listening every day, and stay with us.
Will
Great to
do.
have you here.
Thank you, Bhakta Ed. I'm back, but without visual right here. Sorry.
Okay.
Bhakta Ed, welcome back to Krishna. What an interesting story. You found him.
Yes.
Sorry, something ridiculous happened. I forgot to plug my computer in, and
and
it just
juice.
died.
Yeah, juice. Okay.
And I really wanted to hear the end of the Bhakta Ed story.
You have to listen.
Anyway, I like Walk-in Wednesday. It was great to know our community members.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into Bhagavatam, because we're at a great place. And thanks, Ed, again. For some reason, my camera's acting up, so you're just going to get that picture of me, if that's okay. Om Namo Bhagavate. Oh, we already did that. Ready? Let's start with our mantras. Narayanam Namaskritya, Naram Shaiva Narotamam, Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Before we start in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki, by regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnanatamarandasya Kiranjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes.
Canto 1, chapter 19.
No, not even close.
Not even close, right? I'm just a little blind. Chapter 15, text.
There you go. Let's see. We read. We're still. We had a cliffhanger. We got to come back to the story.
Kaustubha was telling the story of Virat. This is a good one. This is a good one, Mara.
So here's text 14 is what we read yesterday. He said, Arjuna speaking to Yudhishthira, reminiscing, he's in pain. He's feeling separation from Krishna who had left. And he's saying, and he's going over all of the challenges, so on, that they passed through life by Krishna's grace. So he said, the military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelled many invincible existences. And thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I, seated on the chariot, was able to cross over it. And so that, that could be referring to the battle that we're about to talk about, but I believe that refers to the Battle of Kurukshetra in general. But then he also mentions, and only by his grace was I able to regain the cows and also collect by force many helmets of the kings, which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. And so that, regaining the cows and collecting all those jewels and all that, that refers to the story where the Pandavas, there was this stipulation in their exile that they were forced to by their cousin Duryodhana to live in exile for 12 years. And then in the 13th year, they're supposed to live in public, but in disguise.
In disguise.
Yes, in disguise. Incognito.
What a year in disguise.
Would you like
Raghunath,
to
we're going to offer you this vacation, but you must be in disguise.
What would you disguise yourself as, Raghunath?
You're not going to believe it, but I've often thought about this.
Have you?
No. Haven't you ever thought about, I just want to, especially in my life, I've been in the public eye a lot. It'd be nice to go somewhere and be in disguise. Reinvent yourself, take on a fake name, get a new passport.
What's it going to be?
Oh, I have different personas I would become.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I like what I am now, so I'm just going to stay here.
You're not going to share any of those?
No, I'm not going to.
Because you're keeping them in your back pocket in case you need them?
Yeah, in case I have to,
All right.
Pack up and ship off.
All right.
And grow a curly mustache.
So in any case, the Pandavas all went to the kingdom of a king named Virata. And they each had a different disguise. Yudhishthira became the counselor to the king. Bhima became the cook. Nakula and Sahadev, one was taking care of the horses. I forget what the other one was doing.
The cows.
The cows, okay.
Yeah.
Then you had Draupadi. She became some kind of servant to the queen or something like that.
Yeah.
And Arjuna had been cursed by the celestial damsel Urvasi to become a eunuch, right?
And he also learned dancing while he was on the heavenly planets.
And he learned dancing in the heavens where the best dancers are there.
So they also had these talents. Although they were great, incredible warriors, they were multi-talented. Bhima was an incredible chef. Mara, you could call your business Bhima Catering or something. He was a great chef, and of course, Yudhishthira is a great minister because he's so wise.
Yeah. So, so Arjuna becomes the dance teacher, and he's kind of this effeminate dance. Even though he's built like this super massive, warrior, but he also kind of took on this effeminate kind of demeanor, and became the dance teacher. And so fast forward to the years just coming to an end. As a matter of fact, it had just come to an end at this moment, where the Kauravas, the Duryodhana and all his evil cousins, they had determined that they had heard. It's hard not to keep telling connected stories. Right?
You know what? There's so many good stories. Even the story of how he got cursed, why he became cursed.
I mean, that's a story.
That's a good story.
That's a good story. But also the story that I'm referring to now is that there was a warrior.
He got propositioned by an angel. Come on. He got propositioned by a beautiful angel. And he was like, I can't. You're actually one of my descendants. Therefore, I look at you as a mother. I can never think of you like that. And she was like, well, we don't have those things up here. We don't think of it like that up here. He goes, all I know is like she was related to one of his ancestors.
I thought that it was that she had been with Indra, his father.
That could be. Well, that's an ancestor.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how I interpolated.
And so how can I be with you like that? And she's like, no, but those rules that apply on the earth, they don't apply here in the heavens. It's a whole different thing. He said, I'm sorry, I still cannot, And then she cursed him.
Cursed him to be.
And then he went to Indra and said, I got this curse. I'm going to become a eunuch. What do I do now? And he's like, don't worry. It'll work well for you. It'll be advantageous.
It works for our favor. Our curses and our blessings in Bhakti, they all work for our favor.
So it was like a 1-year curse, and it all played out in that year in Virata. So back to the other story that I was telling.
Sorry for going off the trail there.
Is that there was one warrior that was like propositioning Draupadi and getting too aggressive and he just crossed the line, And she was warning him, if you don't back off, I have a husband who's like a powerful, I think she said he's like a powerful Gandharva, like a celestial being, and he will kill you, and he just wouldn't back off. And so then Bhima killed this warrior, but he did it in such a way that like almost no one else could. He almost like crushed him like a can, and his body was found like lying like that. And word of that, you see, Duryodhana had all these spies that were going out trying to discover if they are out there in disguise. And when they came back and they said, we couldn't find anything, if they're disguised really well. But by the way, do you know that the powerful warrior in the kingdom of Virata was crushed like a can, basically?
Crushed like a can.
I don't know if they used that.
Kichaka. That was his name.
Yeah, Kichaka. And so and then they started to think about that, and they said, there are only a few people in existence that could do that to that warrior, and Bhima is one of them. And then they started thinking, let's attack that kingdom of Virata and see if we can get them to come out and expose themselves. Let's steal the cows and see if they step forward and try to save them. So the day before, they hashed up that plot with a group of people called the Trigartas, I believe they're called, who had a history with that warrior that had just been crushed like a can. And they saw this as an advantageous time to attack. So they captured Virata, the king. And now the son of the king, whose name starts with a B, I'm forgetting now, but you had another name.
They called him Uddara Kumar in one of the
Kumar.
Mahabharats I've read, but he has an actual regular name too.
Okay.
But he's sort of the young, sort of weak, not so heroic.
He's not on the level. He's not on the level of the Pandavas and these Kauravas and all of that. It was a
small, weaker kingdom.
Yeah. So he gets the word that they're stealing the cows, right? So Duryodhana, along with Drona and Bhishma and Karna and Ashvatthama and this whole cast of the most incredibly powerful warriors came and they took the cows, and the word came to the king, or the son of the king now, and they said, we need to do something. So he's like, I will bring, he started coming on with his boastful words about how he will go out there and bring back the cows. And seeing this in disguise, Draupadi understands there's no way that this guy is going to be able to handle this. So she said, bring Brihanala. That was Arjuna's name, right? In disguise. Bring the dance teacher. He was Arjuna's charioteer when he fought all the celestials so that Agni could eat the Kandava forest, which we spoke about a few days ago.
So she made up this whole story.
Yeah, he said he's an expert with the horses, and he can drive a chariot as swift as the wind. With him, you will be successful. Bring him. And so Arjuna is invited to come, but he's still kind of disguising himself and I think you mentioned he's putting on the armor and he's doing it all wrong, and everybody's kind of laughing at him. And then this Uttara Kumara, his name was Bhumanjaya. That was his name.
Bhumanjaya, yes.
Bhumanjaya tells him, helps him put on the armor, and then off they go. But as they're approaching, he begins to recognize this is who I'm fighting, right? Duryodhana, himself.
These guys are like superheroes. They're the Maharajas.
Yeah, Bhishma, Drona, Ashvatthama. He becomes terrified. And Brihanala, Arjuna still in disguise, saying, stand strong, you're a warrior, you were speaking such brave words in front of everyone, and now, why are you becoming scared now? And he's like, I don't care what they say, let them take the cows. I don't care if I'm humiliated. There's no way that I can stand up against them. He starts to run. He's running off the chariot. And meanwhile, like all of all of those warriors are looking down. It's, it's about like a mile or whatever. I don't know. There's a good distance, and they're watching this take place, that this warrior is running off the chariot, and this other kind of effeminate warrior, charioteer, is like chasing after him and tackling him and dragging him back. And Arjuna is saying to him, you just don't worry. I will take your role and you take my role, right? You drive the chariot and I will stand and fight them. And somehow the courage of Arjuna just kind of he said, okay, he kind of went along with it. And Arjuna told him, now drive the chariot over to these trees over there. And that's where, before they had entered that kingdom, they took all of their weapons and they tied them up in a bundle and put them high in that tree. And so they went to that tree, and Arjuna said, go up there and take down that bundle. He took down the bundle, and then Arjuna opened it up. And there, for the first time, there are these celestial weapons. And Bhumanjaya is looking at these weapons saying, I've never seen a bow like this. I've never, because Arjuna said, your bow will not be powerful enough to withstand my arrows. It's, and so then, and who do these belong to? And that's when Arjuna revealed himself, this bow belongs to the mighty Bhima, this one to Yudhishthira, and this one belongs to Arjuna. And actually, I'm Arjuna.
This is such a good part in the Mahabharata.
And then he puts it all together. He says, I never even thought of it, but now it makes so much sense. Like the advisor to the king, it has such a noble bearing, and the cook is like, he's so powerful. If he puts it all together, okay, yeah.
I mean, the Pandavas were superheroes, and they were famous, and so these famous people were sort of disguised in this young boy, this young prince's kingdom. And it was like, oh my God, he had this whole paradigm shift. Oh my God, this dance teacher is the world famous Arjuna living amongst me.
So he gets up his courage. Now, I thought maybe I'd read a little bit from this because it's so,
please. Because
you know what I want to read. So what's going to happen now is Arjuna is going to hold that bow in his hand again after 1 year. And as you're reading the Mahabharata, and I really encourage everyone to do, and I'm going to read from the version from a person named Krishna Dharma, and it's an excellent edition. And so as you're reading it, those 12 years while they're in the forest is kind of like you're waiting. When are they going to go back? When are they going to right the wrongs? When are they going to carry out their vows? You're hankering for that. And now, after a year of not touching his bow, Arjuna is holding that Gandiva bow in his hand again, And now he's going to stand in front of Duryodhana, and challenge.
But there's climax also, because it's like, if they're found out before the year's over, they have to do the whole 12 years in exile again. So is the time running out? Is it not running out?
Well, Arjuna knew. He had calculated. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done this.
Gotcha.
But meanwhile, on the other end, Duryodhana, you see, this is what's fascinating to me. And that's why I want to read some of this, is that Duryodhana was a person that was crooked. Duryodhana was a person that was willing to break Dharma to expedite his schemes in life, right? We all need to learn as yogis that even when it's difficult to do the right thing, we have to do the right thing. Duryodhana was the kind of person that would cut those corners. So he hated the Pandavas even though they were so good, and he couldn't defeat them as a warrior. So he used this crooked gambling match, this cheating, in order to do it. So somehow or other, the crooked gambling match won. 13 years had gone by, but this is the way karma works, right? It comes back. And now that time had passed, and now that anxiety was setting in again, right? Whatever he enjoyed through that time,
right,
it's all coming back now. And so now he's going to have to face Arjuna. He's going to have to face Bhima, and not only that, but his elders are telling him, they're all just kind of rubbing it in. They're just speaking the truth, but it's so painful to hear. And he's going to hear it from one, he's going to hear from Bhishma, he's going to hear from Drona, he's going to hear from Ashvatthama, and I'll read some of that. But so Arjuna is now driving the chariot back. And, but meanwhile, so Duryodhana, feeling that anxiety, is saying, well, hold, everybody's saying that there's no doubt that effeminate looking, driver, that's Arjuna. And he's about to face us, and we better get ready, because this is, and they're telling him, well, I'll read that part. But he's also, Duryodhana's thinking, well, if that's Arjuna, then he's exposed himself. He's going to have to be in exile again for another 12 years. This is good, right? Isn't that right? Calculate the time. And Bhishma's going to say, no, we've calculated the time, and he can reveal himself now. The time has run up. So this is, I'm going to pick up reading a bit where Arjuna is now being driven by Bhumanjaya, and Arjuna's going to blow his conch. You can see how Bhumanjaya is like out of his league, because just by blowing his conch, the thunderous sound that came from that just like shook Bhumanjaya. Yeah. So let's read a bit. It says, Arjuna took down the lion banner and meditated. So there's a banner of a lion on that chariot, but Arjuna always rides under what chariot? Mara. Or what banner? Mara?
Hanuman?
That's right. And that
Hey,
Hanuman.
while we're at giving tribute to Mara,
Okay.
where were the weapons? What was the tree called?
The name of the tree. I
The
don't know.
name of the tree where the
That's
weapons
a
were
tough
hidden.
one.
First one to get it on the message board win. Yeah,
Parmananda's got
Parmananda
it.
the Sami
Parmananda's
tree.
good.
He's good at
That's
that.
good. All right. So Arjuna took down the lion banner and meditated on Agni, because Agni is the one that gave him his chariot with the Hanuman banner. A celestial banner fell from the sky, adorned with gold and bearing Hanuman's image. After walking around it reverentially, Arjuna hoisted the flag on the chariot's flagstaff. He ordered Bhumanjaya to drive, and the chariot moved off toward the north in the direction of the Kurus. Arjuna blew his conch shell with all his strength. It emitted a thundering sound which made his horses drop to their knees. The prince, stricken with fear, fell over in the chariot. Arjuna consoled the prince and told him to take courage. You are a Kshatriya, a warrior, and the son of a great king. Why do you tremble at this sound, losing control of the horses? Many times have you heard the sounds of battle, of mighty conches and trumpets being blown. Why are you terrified like an ordinary man? The prince got up and took hold of the reins. He brought the horses back to their feet and replied, surely I have heard many conches blown, but never one such as this, nor have I ever heard a bow sounding like the Gandiva. This celestial banner also fills me with wonder. The monkey seems to be alive and about to leap down from the flag. My mind is simply astonished. So Arjuna laughed, stand firm on the chariot and hold the reins tightly, for I will blow my conch again. Arjuna blew his conch and twanged his bow once more. The combined sound filled the four quarters and seemed to rend the mountains. The prince kept his position with difficulty and controlled the terrified steeds. In the distance, Drona heard the terrible sounds Arjuna was making. So now Drona is Arjuna's guru. He's kind of like bound to kind of serve Duryodhana, the evil cousin, just politically. But he has deep love and affection for Arjuna in his heart. He was like his pet disciple. And so he's hearing that. He's knowing this is Arjuna, right? No doubt now. This is Arjuna. So he says, in the distance, Drona heard the terrible sounds Arjuna was making. He turned to Duryodhana, who's also his disciple. And he says, there is no doubt that Arjuna has come to fight with us. Even more dreadful omens are now visible, portending a great calamity for the Kurus. Your army seems cheerless, as if they were weeping. So now imagine, Duryodhana, the 13 years have passed. He's standing on the battlefield. Is that Arjuna? And now his guru is telling him all this. He says, look at your army. Look what's going on here. Look at all the bad omens. It's all coming back. All our leading warriors stand motionless, bereft of energy. A pall of gloom seems to hang over our forces. Let us make ready for battle. When Arjuna appears, you will have cause to repent your actions. Duryodhana scowled. He went over to Bhishma. So that's like another guru figure for all of them, and another person that has just a heart full of love for Arjuna. but
Part of me
standing on the
feels
other
the
side.
first book you should ever read is the Mahabharata.
Oh, so good, right?
You know what I mean? It gives you
Yeah.
the whole context of like Vedic culture and who
It
Krishna
does.
is and what great souls are. And I got into it like a few years after I moved into an ashram,
Yeah.
but it sort of like really inspires you to want to read the Bhagavad Gita, which I think is one of the goals of the whole story is
It
you
is,
want to
yeah.
hear,
Yeah.
you know, who's Krishna, because Arjuna is the hero of the Mahabharata. So you want to hear what his questions are. You want to hear Krishna, this interesting, sort of peculiar character that the cool people all love and the evil people all hate. Go on.
Okay, so
I'm just like listening.
So now Bhishma is going to speak. Now Duryodhana's just got it from he knows how much Drona loves Arjuna. He can't stand, that my guru loves him more than me. That's part of his envy. Now he's going over to Bhishma because he can't hear anymore from Drona. He says, "Oh, grandfather, it seems we have found the Pandavas before their exile is complete. The condition was that they should return to exile if found in their final year. If this is indeed Bhabat," so it's like, this is such low character for a warrior, right? A warrior should stand up and fight him if he wants to fight him. And now he's getting all like sniveling and trying to find some technical way. It's embarrassing, right? But he's back there again in his anxiety. The condition was that they should return to exile if found in their final year. If this indeed is Arjuna, then they will have to spend another 12 years in the forest. You should carefully calculate the time, O Bhishma, so that there's no doubt. Duryodhana looked around. In the distance, he saw the dust rising from Arjuna's chariot. Duryodhana held his bow firmly. Whoever is coming towards us, be it Arjuna or the Matsya king, Virata, we will have to fight today. Why then are our leading men sitting panic-stricken on their chariots? We are many, and here comes but a single warrior. Our preceptors' talk of omens and calamities is unbecoming. Our agreement with Shusharma was that we would support him in the battle against Virata. We must now keep our promise. O Bhishma, arrange our troops for battle. I fear that Drona is overpowered by his affection for the enemy. How can he guide or protect us in our hour of danger? Now Karna is going to come up. Now Karna is the brother of Arjuna, although neither of them know it. And he's become the ally of Duryodhana. And Arjuna, he's the fiercest rival of Arjuna. Karna comes up alongside Duryodhana. He spoke loudly so that all the Kurus could hear him. And he says, "It seems you have all become fearful simply upon seeing Arjuna. Do you not know that Arjuna is no match for me? After spending a long time in the forest, he will be weak in battle. Like a qualified Brahmin receiving charity, he will soon quietly receive thousands of my arrows. By killing Arjuna, I will repay my debt to Duryodhana. Today I will extinguish the Pandava fire, which is kindled by the fuel of weapons and which consumes all enemies. My unfailing shafts will pierce Partha like serpents entering an anthill. You will see him lying on the ground like a hill covered with golden karnika flowers. With powerful javelins, I will bring down the screaming monkey from his banner and shatter his chariot to pieces. All of you may fight alongside me, or, if you like, go away with the cows. I can face Arjuna alone." Right? Love this stuff.
Love it.
Now another elder named Kripa speaks. Kripa looked contemptuously at Karna. He says, "O Karna, your crooked mind always desires war. You do not understand things according to time, place, and circumstances. Wise men only choose war when all other means have failed and when the signs are favorable. How can it be favorable for us to face Arjuna in an encounter? Alone," now he starts to talk about all the glorious things that Arjuna did. "Alone he vanquished the Gandharvas." That's a whole story we can't get into. "And alone he withstood the celestial host at the Kundava forest," which we spoke about a few days ago. "Again, alone he defeated the Nivatakavachas and the Kalakanyas. Unaided, he fearlessly took away Subhadra from the midst of the Yadus, exciting the wrath of the invincible Balaram. Now he has come before us practicing celibacy in the forest and having acquired from the gods all their divine weapons." So he's saying like, he's powerful now. Arjuna's chariot had stopped some way off. The Kuru army arrayed itself in a pointed formation facing his direction. At the head of the army, Kripa continued to speak, admonishing Karna, who had stood fuming in his chariot, his great bow held at the ready. And now he goes on. Anyone desiring to fight alone with Arjuna is deranged, Kripa said as he pulled on his gloves. He is.
They all like hated Karna. All the elders. All the elders. He had a bad attitude.
Karna always felt disrespected by them, and he hates having to hear him say this stuff. He said, anyone desiring to fight Arjuna alone is deranged. He is like a man who desires to swim the ocean with a rock tied to his neck. Oh, Karna, you brag like a foolish child. You wish to take out the fangs of an infuriated serpent with your bare fingers, or to pass through blazing fire after smearing your body with oil and dressing in silk. Arjuna will move through our ranks like Yamaraj, the god of death, with a rod in his hand. Let our army, clad in coats of mail, stand ready. Let yourself, myself, Duryodhana, Bhishma, Drona, and his son stand together. Maybe if we six are united and supported by our army, we will stand a chance, although even then, I am doubtful. Now, this is heavy, right? Now, Drona's son, because Duryodhana had just said about his own guru, he's got too much affection for the Pandavas, so he can't lead our army. I need Bhishma to lead the army. So now Drona's son, who also, he felt those pangs because even his own father seemed to love Arjuna more, but he couldn't stand to hear Duryodhana speak that way about his father. So Ashvatthama is going to come up and rub it in now. Ashvatthama pulled up his chariot behind his father. He heard Karna's speech, and he too spoke derisively. He says, we have not as yet achieved anything, Karna. We have not taken the cows, and we have not defeated the enemy. Why then do you boast? Great heroes, even after winning many battles and conquering great kingdoms, do not utter a single word of self-praise. Indeed, silence itself is the quality of the truly powerful. So much wisdom in the Mahabharata, right? He said, fire burns silently, and silently does the sun shine, right? These powerful forces, fire and the sun. Fire burns silently, and silently does the sun shine. The earth bears her great load of moving and non-moving creatures without a word. The powerful Ashvatthama, always galled by Karna's arrogance, was especially angered by his disregard for Drona, his father. Standing in his chariot with his hand on his long sword, he loudly rebuked Karna, echoing his father's sentiments. He said, what warrior on this earth could be proud of winning a kingdom by deceitful gambling like this wicked and sinful Duryodhana? And in what single combat did you or he ever defeat Arjuna or any one of his brothers? In what battle did you conquer Indraprastha, the kingdom of the Pandavas? In what encounter did you win Draupadi, O man of wicked deeds, so that you could drag her to the assembly? He's saying Arjuna won the hand of Draupadi. You did this crooked gambling match. Arjuna won his kingdom. You used this crooked method to do it. And it's all coming back to him now, right? Duryodhana's just having to sit here and hear this and feel the anxiety, just like in the humiliation, like grow in him. He said, you have cut the root of a sal tree, that is the Kuru dynasty. Arjuna and his brothers will never forgive you for your insult to Draupadi. Ashvatthama looked across at Arjuna's chariot, which was waiting in the distance. He remembered their time together in his father's school. Arjuna had always been Drona's favorite, and that had hurt him deeply, but there was no doubting Arjuna's martial skills. Ashvatthama had been forced to grudgingly admit his own inferiority. There was not a warrior on earth who could match Arjuna in bowmanship. Karna's bold words would soon be shown to be little more than idle boasts. Turning back to Karna, Ashvatthama continued, Arjuna never turns away from a fight, even when faced with Gandharvas, Rakshasas, or Asuras. Whoever he turns upon is blown away, as a tree is knocked over by the force of Garuda's wings. Who would not praise Arjuna, who is superior to you in prowess, no less skilled a bowman than Indra, and equal even to Krishna himself in battle? My father's warning should be heeded. His affection for Arjuna should not be criticized, for the wise say that a disciple is the same as a son. Ashvatthama then looked at Duryodhana. "O proud man, fight with Arjuna in the same way that you defeated him at dice. Let your uncle Shakuni," who was the one that was rolling the dice, "let your uncle Shakuni now show his true prowess in real fight. The Gandiva bow of Arjuna does not cast dice. It discharges burning arrows. Those dreadful shafts can rend the mountains and pierce the earth. The Lord of Death, the wind god, or the god of fire may leave something behind, but Arjuna, worked up with anger, does not. You may challenge him if you wish, supported by the vain son of Asuta," referring to Karna. "But for myself, I see no point in fighting Dhananjaya, fighting Arjuna." Oh, man. You ready, Raghu?
Yeah. Let's get him.
Okay. Now, Bhishma had been listening to all the speeches. He was sure that it was Arjuna who had appeared before him in the guise of a eunuch. The old Kuru warrior longed to embrace him again. It was tragic that he had to face Arjuna in the battlefield. A warrior's duties were hard and painful without doubt. There was no way to avoid this fight. Arjuna would certainly not abandon his duty as a warrior. The Kurus would need all their prowess to unite to face him in battle. Their arguments would only weaken them and make it easier for Arjuna to win. Bhishma looked across at Arjuna's chariot and said, "Drona's son has spoken well, as his Kripa, Karna. Karna speaks his boast only to incite us to perform our warrior duties." Basically what he does is he says, look, we need to stop arguing here. You know, we don't stand a chance unless we stop this fighting. So I'll skip forward a little bit. And Drona says, "Drona stood in his chariot, radiant in his bright armor. He said, Bhishma's words have pacified me. The grandfather has spoken well. We should arrange ourselves with care and protect Duryodhana. I am sure that this is Arjuna, and I do not think he will be satisfied merely by recovering Virata's cows. I am also sure that he would not have shown himself before his exile had expired. Oh, Bhishma, tell us your opinion." Bhishma had already calculated the time. Like Duryodhana, he too had carefully considered the reports of Hastinapur's spies and concluded that the Pandavas were very likely at Virata. As he looked across at Arjuna's chariot, tears pricked in his eyes, and he said, "Kunti's sons, the Pandavas, are not greedy and will never do anything against virtue," he declared. "All of them are noble. With Yudhishthira at their head, there is no doubt that they will keep their word. They do not desire to win the kingdom by unfair means. Otherwise, why did they not show their prowess even at the gambling match? The Pandavas would sooner invite death than speak untruth. By my calculation, their time is complete. I therefore conclude that we will soon see all 5 brothers again. If Duryodhana will not restore their kingdom, then our meeting will take place on a battlefield." Duryodhana smoldered like a fire fed with oil. He seemed about to burst into flames. His dark eyes turned toward Bhishma, and he spoke in a low voice, "I will not return the Pandavas' kingdom. O grandfather, please arrange for a battle." Bhishma was grave. "We should act with caution. I have yet to see a battle in which one side was sure to be victorious, and one party is always defeated. We now face Arjuna. I therefore suggest, O king, that you leave with half the army. Take the cows with you, and I, along with the other Kuru leaders, will remain here to hold up Arjuna." Duryodhana agreed. Leaving Bhishma in charge for half the army, he left with the other half, driving the cows ahead of him. Bhishma stood surrounded by Drona, Kripa, Karna, and Ashvatthama. He ordered them into various positions in preparation for battle. As they moved in position, they saw Arjuna's chariot approach. He heard a sound resembling thunderclaps as Arjuna twanged his bowstring. Drona said, "There is no doubt this is the Gandiva. No other bow could emit such sounds. Observe closely the banner on the chariot. There you will see the celestial monkey sending forth terrible cries. Know for certain that it is Arjuna who faces us." As Arjuna spoke, and this is so beautiful, right? As Arjuna spoke, 2 arrows fell from the sky and landed in his chariot at his feet. Other arrows touched the chariots of Bhishma and Kripa. Now, quiz question, Mara, what was the meaning of those arrows?
I don't know.
Seeing his elders again after a long time, this is Drona speaking. Seeing his elders again after a long time, Partha, Arjuna, is offering his respects. It was his way of bowing down to them. He sent arrows that landed at their feet. Seeing his elders again after a long time, Arjuna is offering his respects, Drona said, holding up his hands to bless Arjuna. Pandu's sun shines on the battlefield like a well-tended sacrificial fire. Stand firm, for his next arrows will not be carrying respects. That ends that chapter, and I think ends our day here. We're still cliffhanging here. You got the music, Raghu?
I just muted.
Sorry, I didn't want to make noise. What?
You got Jackson Fire? What is this?
It's a long story.
Okay.
But
Someone needs help customizing and saving with the
what? Let's try
What
that
are you
again. Okay. Thank you for the Mahabharata. That was very beautiful.
Well, we'll finish the story tomorrow.
And thanks to Bhakta Ed for coming on the show. That was beautiful walk on Wednesday. And thanks for that story. And it brought him full circle back to Krishna. And here, 12 years of exile, bringing full circle back to Krishna. And Mara getting stumped repeatedly, but humbled and going fully back to Krishna. We're all going back to Krishna. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And thanks, everybody, for a great walk on Wednesday. And we are not having class on Saturday, Kaustubha. We got to tell everybody
breaking
that.
our streak.
Breaking our streak. I'm sorry, but we wanted you to join us at the Bhakti Center. I'm doing a full day retreat with Radhanath Swami, Yogi Charu, Janavi Devi, and Jagirid Hari. And that's going to be great. If you haven't seen that, go to the Bhakti Center website, bhakticenter.org. And we'll do questions and answers tomorrow, Friday. But we're going to still do it at 5 a.m. I recommended to Kaustubha a sleep-in Friday, and he said, "No, Raghu, that's Maya." So I said, "What?" And he said, "It's Maya."
Mara
So
said it too.
5 a.m. 5 a.m. Friday, and we're all excited for that. So if you have your questions on your spiritual path, hey, write them in to Mara, wisdomsages108@gmail.com, and she'll carefully select and dispose of the ones she wants answered and doesn't want answered. Because there's an information filter here at Wisdom of the Sages.
We don't know what is her method.
We don't know
She has her own ways.
Hey, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, just go to your Apple Podcast, give us a 5-star review. It does something. I'm not even quite sure it does, but it helps us. I only know this because other podcasts highly recommend that you do that. And everybody listening on Zoom that I didn't say good morning to, good morning. And I also want to share Bobby Marchand, me and Kaustubha, we're doing a teacher training up here in upstate New York, 2.5 hours east of Boston, 2.5 hours north of New York City. Starts July 17th. So if you want to do a 200-hour training, Bhakti inspired, you can check that out at supersoulyoga.com. Go to trainings. And it's a wonderful 4 fat weekends. Come up to the country and get out of the city. And one of our dear friends and teachers, Bobby Marchand from Prema Yoga. She's the empowered asana instructor. Jaya Radhe, Jai Shri Krishna Bolo Jai Radhe.